Just before the market closed on Tuesday, Wema Bank, one of the Tier 2 banks, if you want to classify it as that, I think Wema Bank belongs to Tier 3, but of course that's a subject to, I'm going to ask Robert Omotunde here where Wema Bank really is in terms of whether it's it's definitely not Tier 1, that I know. This lender reports 5.12% growth in gross earnings, driven by 0.12% growth in interest and another 30.45% in non-interest income. That was released by the bank yesterday. Year on year, profit before tax growth 27.4% from 1.43 billion in the first half of 2017 to 1.83 billion in the first half of 2018. This is one of the first numbers we're getting from the banking sector for the first half of the year, and that is a thumbs up here for this lender. The CEO of Wema Bank, Ademola Adebisi, says yesterday that the performance in the first half of 2018 was, quote, largely in line with our expectations. Wema Bank grew deposit by nearly 40% to 354.8 billion naira, much higher than 254.4 billion naira reported in the first half of last year, because they said the rebranding and what have you. So the bank says to keep its 5-year retail strategy in place moving forward. Robert, good morning. It's good to have you. Robert Omotunde from the head of research at AfriInvest. We have a lot to talk about over this two-part conversation. And where is Wema?
Well, without getting into that conversation, 242 billion of deposits relative to banks that have 4 trillion deposits. You know, I think the viewers can judge.
Viewers can judge where you belong.
The bank stands. But again, in the Tier 1 space, we could say that perhaps we should have another premium tier. You know, because even in the Tier 1 space, it's arguable there are some stocks,
one or two banks
in terms of fundamentals that you probably want to say they are in the lower tier of the Tier 1.
Tier 1.
You know.
So even we'll break Tier 1 into 2. So we should have a premium.
Across all the banks, we possibly have a premium tier.
You folks go work it out. You folks who are research analysts, work it out. Give us a feedback. Maybe we need to recategorize a little bit.
Well, again, you know, it's not that the categorization is not a regulatory classification.
No, it's not.
You know,
it's not due to the central
industry
bank.
Experts. You know, for instance, AfriInvest was the first to categorize the banks on the basis of their total assets. And that's why we categorize as Tier 1. So you have total assets in excess of 2 trillion, then we categorize you as a Tier 1. But you need to prove consistently that your asset is above that level.
What's the most important criteria to say you're Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, or you are Tier 1.5, Tier 2.5, or Tier 3?
Undoubtedly, when you're looking at a bank, size is very important.
Yes.
You know, which is why we'll talk about assets. When you talk about you look at the deposit of the bank, the capital base of the bank, and other borrowings that the bank, you know, uses to grow its assets, you cannot, by the time you're looking at the value of the assets of the bank, it tells you where the bank's liability funding mix, you know, is in terms of size as well.
So when we say assets, for the folks on the street, it means cash. It means the buildings,
the
brick and mortar.
Well, for the bank, the buildings make less than 5% in most cases
of the total
assets, because you know they're dealing with cash is the stock in trade for the bank. So you're looking at their loans, the loan book. You're looking at their investment in securities,
retained earnings,
treasury bills, bonds, of course, retained earnings somewhat because it's part of their capital. You know, so for a bank, your size is determined by how much of deposit you have, how much of borrowings you've done to be able to grow assets, you know, and of course, how much of other forms of liabilities, you know, the bank currently carry, and of course, the bank's capital itself, you know, in growing the assets. So Wema, perhaps.
Good. Well, but this is good news for whatever size, whatever tier this bank is. This is not really bad for first half of the year. 5.12% growth. Well, if you're looking at deposit of between first half 2017 and first half of 2018, something in around 100 billion growth in deposit.
That is fantastic.
That's fantastic.
And again, it's traceable to the strategy of the bank. You know, fintechs are disrupting what's happening across different sectors. You know, in the banking space, we've seen Wema take the lead. You know, a bank you could classify as one of the, you know, lowest in terms of assets. You know, by CBN's classification, Wema will fall under a small bank. You know, since we say as small, medium, and, you know, large banks. You know, but again, their fintech strategy has been able to drive deposit. It's been able to drive a lot of people, you know, on their platform. And the process is seamless. You know, you need to just go through the
if I'm looking at the banks, for example, it's not just enough to look at, well, I don't want to say ABC at the very top, but perhaps I should also look below the level.
Definitely. Wema is,
because sometimes the tendency is to say, well, if the names is not on the street, as it were, they're not doing well. This proves that you can really do well, whether you are in tier 1 or 2 or 3.
Whether you're in tier 1 or tier 2. Now, the issue here is that most of the banks are now learning to create a niche for themselves.
Wherever they are.
So in the case of Wema, what we're seeing them doing is, okay, in our space, you know, a national bank, usually, I mean, previously a regional bank, but now transitioning into a national bank, they needed to drive that growth. And to drive growth for a banking business, you need deposits. Do you think
Wema, for example, is trying to take some of the lunch belonging to the big boys in the AAA level, where you have Access, Zenith, UBA, GT?
The market is saturated, no doubt. But like I said, when you cover it, you know, convenience is something that most customers really want.
So depending on whether they don't care much about the assets. Yeah, so they want convenience.
It's a situation where somebody already has one of the big banks, like you mentioned, GT, Access. But we don't mind to open an alert, which you can do while you're sitting here. You get a bank account, you know, while you're sitting here using the Wema Alert app, for example, you know, and most of the other banks are, you know, are beginning to plug into this. You know, you bring in a disruptive technology, and then you see
EcoBank is also looking at something like EcoBank is also talking about their own app. It looks like everybody's talking about an app these days.
Because that's the way to go, you know.
We have a China's mobile app anyway. Just in case you folks out there don't know, we have a mobile app as well.
I'm saying that everybody's job is threatened on advent of technology. You know, your job, my job. They have been threatened, you know, so we just need to keep moving and keep changing with the time.
I need to create an app as I get older doing this job. Boosting app.
Perhaps an app will be able to sit where you're sitting in the future.
I want to be here on the seat. No, don't take my seat. Any app. Just put it on the phone. Where's my phone really? I guess it's somewhere. Just put the app on the phone and I remain the one in charge. That is good.